Good morning. I'm Dr. Laura. Welcome to The Higher View. And this is part two of my conversation with Yolanda Naava, who we started talking about 2020 and what we can do to set intentions for 2021. And so, as you know, Yolanda Naava has got a fascinating story. She's an author. She was a newscaster. She's won awards. And so I want to just welcome Yolanda to our show this morning. Good morning, Yolanda.
Good morning, Dr. Laura. It's great to be back. Thank you.
Good. Well, so we're going to pick up where we kind of left off, but I was thinking about it since we were talking about how everyone just says, oh, thank God 2020 is over. And I get that. We've had some very unprecedented experiences this last year, but somebody posted, and I want to share this with everyone on Facebook, and probably some of you have seen it, but it says, your 2020 was better than you think. And it said the ozone hole over Antarctica closed. Yay. Germany is changing 62 military bases into nature reserves. How beautiful is that?
Yes,
right?
yes.
Whales came back to the Atlantic Ocean after more than 100 years. Maybe with us not driving and getting around so much, this has really helped the planet. Great Britain reported the smallest number of people that became infected with HIV in history. Well, it's probably because there's no contact. Just saying.
Just say no.
China, as the biggest air polluter in the world, committed to achieving zero emissions by 2060. That's wonderful. The number of victims of terrorism decreased for the fifth year in a row. In 2020, people saved 48 animal species from extinction. I mean, that is wonderful.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Oh my gosh. Scientists discovered 20 new animal and plant species. They also rediscovered some they thought were extinct.
Wow.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, it is great.
So Kazakhstan became the 88th nation that committed to abolish the death penalty. Elephant population in Kenya doubled. Well, they were busy. I know. Saudi Arabia and Palestine banned child marriages. Demand for oil decreased for the first time in history, and Denmark even promised to end its mining. I mean, we're really getting more conscious about the planet. Scotland will provide menstrual aids to all women for free. Wow. And in Africa, polio has been completely eradicated.
Wow.
They owe it to the vaccine. And then, of course, vaccine against COVID-19 became the fastest developed vaccine in history. So, I really want, us, it's so easy for us to get caught up, right, Yolanda, in the negative in the world and focus on poor me, this is bad and stuff. But meanwhile, our news doesn't really promote too much of these positive things, sensationalism that grabs people. So, and for me, you are one of the most positive people that I have ever met, I truly. And so anyway, I kind of wanted to talk about that, to the, like, where are we going to march forward in 2021? And you have a process, don't you, for intentions that you kind of hit on last week?
Yes, we touched on it last week a little bit, but it is all about attention. What we pay attention to is what we're going to get more of. And so if we were to focus on these wonderful achievements, major achievements in terms of climate change and human relations, getting rid of, child marriage and those kind of things, it's, wiping out polio in Africa. It's in a country of Africa. People are moving ahead in by leaps and bounds, and there's always a mixed bag. So what do we pay attention to? the ozone layer has, healed up. I have a girlfriend up in the Bay Area. She says, gosh, Yolanda, the skies are so blue. Everything is so clear. There's no traffic on the highways. It's wonderful. And, that is all going on at the same time that people are saying, gosh, I'm having trouble finding toilet paper. Well, let's look at the grand scheme of things. Now, toilet paper is important, but we have to, what is really important? And so these larger things are what we need to look at. It's the same thing in our own life. And when the COVID hit, I had already started working on my book, but when I thought I'd finished my book. I ended up rewriting it. When the COVID hit, I just chose to make 2020 a writer's retreat. And so every day I got up with purpose. That was really important. And I got a lot done. I even wrote poetry. I didn't want to be writing poetry. I was trying to finish a manuscript. And here I am writing poetry because I was feeling this creative flow, which I think I attribute it to love. I attribute it to my spiritual work. When I lost sight in 2009 in August, I realized that I had to, just a few months after that, after I got home from the hospital, I realized that I needed to develop a spiritual practice. I wasn't doing that. Mm-hmm. I was every now and then, so here and there, I was always affirmative. I was always talking to God and stuff like that. But in terms of a discipline, of a spiritual practice, that helps focus us. And so doing those things and being on purpose, masking and doing all the right stuff, got me through the year just beautifully. I'm an only child. I'm used to being alone. And I'm not codependent. And so it was really an opportunity. It was really an opportunity, Laura, to really grow into being a writer, because writing takes dedication. And you read about some writers, and Hemingway would, drunk or sober, at 8:00 in the morning, he had his yellow pads and his pencils or whatever. Yeah, I think it was pencils that he wrote with. And even if he didn't write but a sentence or two, he sat there for 4 hours to write. That was his intention. Wow. Yes. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the stories of writers, it is like that. Elizabeth Gilbert, I just read a wonderful book of hers called, which is an older book. It's called Big Magic. And she talks about the dedication that she has had and commitment to her writing practice. And many of the writers who write do have a practice of sitting down and being with the work. They're not running around. I try giving, from, let's say, 8 to 12, 9 to 1 to writing, but then I'm getting up to do a Zoom. I'm getting up to do, go to the market. I try not to make appointments in the early morning. I like to do it after maybe 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock. But it's what we pay attention to. And then moving into the new year, when you look back at the previous year, the exercise is to acknowledge what you have accomplished, to really look and dig in and see what you did. And the first year I did this, I realized that I had adjusted to a gap in relationship, a hiatus, I'll call it. And I didn't feel clingy and needy and poor me and all that stuff. I just said, this is a gift. He's got to do what he's got to do. This gives me the opportunity to really dig into my work, my writing. And I started writing poetry. I didn't expect to write poetry when I'm trying to finish a book. And the real thing was thinking in terms of the spiritual practice. But to draw from the calendar, I went back through every month calendar to see where what I'd done, where I'd gone. I had, traveled in and out of LA. I had at that time. And I acknowledged all the growth, the speaking opportunities that I had, created and took advantage of, the people that I had met, the different connections, and just a sense of well-being and just moving forward. So looking at the previous year, when you acknowledge what you've accomplished, just like when you read that series of wonderful events, wonderful changes that have taken place, we can do that in our lives too. And they're there, but we tend to focus on the negative, and so it's a new way of looking at the new year. Acknowledge the good, release the negative, so that in the new year, you set your intentions, not resolutions. You intend to do something. There
Right.
was a Thomas Merton, the Christian mystic. He's a priest, a writer, a poet, wonderful work that he does. And he was at Columbia University, and his professor was Mark Van Doren, who himself is a poet, written many, many poets. And he had all kinds of students. And as a professor, he encouraged people to be who they are. Some turned out to be Marxists. Some turned out to be, Merton turned out to be a priest. And Merton asked his professor, he says, how do I become a saint? And the professor said, want to become a saint. And so, yes, yeah.
It's beautiful.
Isn't it? Isn't
Yeah,
it?
really
And
beautiful.
so how often do we do that? How often do we really claim, you know what? I really want to be uh, uh, a better writer. I really want to master technology. I really want to have, not focus on anything negative, not react negatively, towards stupidity. And that's a hard one, judgments, let go of it. Okay, this is process. Everybody's in their own place, and, don't judge it. You can't.
Yeah, absolutely. Yolanda, you're talking about writing your book. One of my first guests was a beautiful woman, Diana Wentworth, and she's done some amazing work, and she's written. And I had, just to sit in, because I wanted to get a feel for her, I sat in. She was doing a like a lecture, a workshop for the Palm Springs Writers Guild. And one of the things she said, which I thought was actually a really good idea, maybe you're not inspired to write this magnificent book or whatever, but she suggested that everybody should sit down and write a book about their life, about the things that they experienced, their challenges, how they overcame them. And that would be something that they would hand down to their children, their grandchildren, maybe grandchildren that will never really know you. But wow, look at the time, the times that my great grandma, what she did, and, kind of your memoirs. And I thought, when you start thinking, going back on your life, I'm going to be 70 next week. And I'm thinking of all the things, what I thought at the time were such terrible things and challenging. And you look back and you look at the gift like, wow, but for that, yes, it was difficult to go through, but it moved me in this direction. And, and really, yes, we've had some really struggles in our life. I mean, and that's what I love about you, how, what you've been through, and with your career and what you were doing, that could have really had somebody go in a dark, dark place and stay there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And there are those times when we are in the dark. A lot of people, as you said, a lot of people remain there. Reverend Joe said when we talked, and he's in my book, I talked to him as I was winding it up, and I was making these new discoveries because I started doing research on myself by interviewing other people. And it was fascinating what I found out. And he said, it was about, I forgot, I lost my thought because I started going off on Reverend Joe, but he acknowledged that it's you don't become the thing. It's a chapter. You pass through a chapter in a book, you read it, you just move through it, and you go to the next chapter. And so, like you said, when you look back at some things that you thought were pretty awful, you realize that there's always a hidden nugget in these situations. When I was reporting for KCBS, my contract could have been renewed in April of 1989, the year that my mother fell ill, and as it turned out, it wasn't. There was an issue with the managing editor. He did not like me. And he had told me that if it's in my power, you will not be here. He told me that about a year before. Yeah. And I didn't fight it. I didn't, I just kind of went through because I was newly a single mother, and it was really challenging to have a schedule change every 2 weeks. And so it's interesting. And then I realized when the contract wasn't renewed, I didn't even worry about the money because I needed it. I needed it, but I didn't even think about it because I had the opportunity to be with my mother every day of the last 6 weeks of her life.
Oh,
And that's what created the book, because
Mm.
I asked her, Mom, what's made you so strong? And she said, beans, and that went flying over my head. And I didn't get it till 8 months later when I realized, oh, it's the attention to the smallest details of everyday life. It's the virtues. So it gifted me. And, I did that book 10 years later. She died in 89 and the book came out in 2000. I turned it in 98, 80, early 99. And so we don't know what's going to come of whatever dark time we have to pass through, but there's always a blessing. And you remember that movie, Marigold Hotel?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we have all these people, these retirees from England, to go to India to have a more economical life. And so he's listening to their stories and he's so upbeat and positive and affirmative and loving. And they're telling him their tales of woe. And he says, well, is it over yet? No, well, there's something good. There's always we don't know the end of the tale. So we have to look forward with anticipation and with intention. So you write down your intentions. And from writing them down, it gives them power. Some people say, put it in post-it notes or 5 cards all over your place. But whatever you have to do, I write my intentions at the beginning of my morning pages. And you talk about writing as a way just to, flesh things out. I've been doing morning pages. I have them in my computer from 2012, and I was doing them. I've been them off and on for decades. I don't have them all because I've had different versions of the computer, but when I did this process of looking back at the previous year, I went back and looked at my morning pages. I went, wow, I felt this way and I did that with it. And I overcame this kind of, agitation or concern or fear. And so you grow through it if you reflect. People aren't reflecting right now; they're reacting.
Yes. Isn't that true?
Yeah.
So let me ask you about those morning pages. So what are they? Is it your intention, or do you write like what's going on with you, or what do you do on those?
This is a process, and that there's a book on it. I can't think of the name of the author right now, but I read it years ago. She's in the film business, and you sit down. I call it morning pages. You can write it. Most people write it in a notebook. I put it in my computer because I can't read my writing, and so I put the document. It's a Word document, and I have it for each year, and I've kept them for each year, and I have them in this computer since 2012. And so you sit down first thing in the morning, and I have a dream log as well. And sometimes I start in the morning pages and I'm starting to tell a dream, and then I cut it and paste it into the dream log and then cross-reference it. You just write whatever's coming out. It's your twilight state, it's your intuitive state, it's a beautiful day, it's so-and-so's birthday, whatever it is, or I was churning about X, Y, or Z. And then it just flows through you if you allow it to flow through you. And it's very honest. And sometimes it's really good writing, and sometimes it's just, gobbledygook. But you're doing it as a discipline. I consider it a spiritual discipline. It's one of the first things I do in the morning.
So let me ask you, so then do you ever go back and review it, like at the end of the year, and see, oh wow, I do remember when that, and look at, I overcame that, or do you just keep it and just file it away, or how do you, I was just wondering.
The year that I started doing the new practice of reflecting on the previous year before moving into the next year, I started kind of just scanning it, but there's a lot of writing, 365 days, and it might be a half a page or a page. That's a lot of writing. But yes, I went back, and that is not to every single day, but just kind of flipped back and forth, popped in and just saw what came up. And if there was a particular month that I wanted to focus on, I would look at that. or if I saw myself speaking and doing something and I said, well, what else was going on? I'd look at the morning pages. So it does help you get a handle on yourself. There are two processes that I've done, and I'd like to share this other one as well as the morning pages, because it gets you into your center first thing in the morning. And then I do, my yoga, and I do my walk. It's too cold for me to go out now. So I do yoga in the house, and I walk in the afternoon. But the other process is the intensive journal process. And that is through Dialogue House in New York. And the founder of that was Ira Progoff, who was a Jungian psychotherapist and trained by Jung. And so it's a very reflective process. And he created a whole structure of how you look at your life. You note the stepping stones of your life. And that's when I realized there are 12 stepping stones that you write when you do these workshops with him. And I discovered it was in the late 70s, I discovered that my life was a spiritual journey. Now, that's a discovery?
That's true. I mean, that's profound, but yet that is so true. If we all just understood that, right?
Yes, because you think your life is your job, or you're this title or that title or whatever it is. And it was funny because I was married at the time to my children's father, and he was in California legislature. And I was working. I took 2 years off with each baby. I nursed. I did the whole thing. I was on boards and stuff, and I was very active during those 2 years. But I was focused on my babies, and it was wonderful because being a political wife, you had to travel back and forth. If anybody hasn't read Michelle Obama's book, it's hard. It's not an easy life, and it's challenging. And most of the load goes on the mother, the wife, because it's got to be that way. And she had her own, commitments and her own drive and her own ambitions. And I did too. But I took time off to be a full-time mother. And then I went back to work after 2 years. I wasn't afraid. A lot of women didn't have babies, didn't get married in that era. Connie Chung missed the opportunity to have a child because by the time she wanted to do it at 43, it was too late for her. Some women, nowadays you have them babies later. So it's shifting, and this process of looking at life as spirit, that we have a spiritual life, that we are spiritual beings. And at the same time, I was doing class study during that decade. I was doing class study with Bill Hornaday at Founders Church. And so I was doing a lot of work, and I realized there was almost like a full page piece on my husband and I in the Sacramento Bee, the broadcaster and the journalist, because we're a power couple. And I look at this, and I'm sitting at the grand piano in this gorgeous house, that I had hired a decorator to help me with, because I had to negotiate that with my husband. He wanted to move downtown, and we bought a lovely home downtown, but I wanted to live quasi-rural. So I said, okay, the deal is, I get to decorate. And so we did that, and I'd never done that since. But it was a beautiful, beautiful home, beautiful child, baby, started all that family. I said, is this all there is?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so it's we often don't know who we are and what we're doing. We're just kind of on a treadmill. And I certainly was. I tend to be, I realize, a workaholic. So that's why I liked the COVID, because I had a reason to be working to finish a manuscript. And I did need to finish this manuscript. I was committed to it. My son says, why don't you just, be with it, Mom? Just let it. No, it's time. I'm done. On. I have 4 other books I want to write. But that process of intensive journal workshop, I think I would recommend it to anybody that is at all spiritually affected, that wants to look at their life, that wants to shape their life differently, and to know that there are going to be bumps and bruises along the way. Ira Progoff told me one day, I was all agitated. I had flown from Los Angeles to San Francisco. I had to get from the airport to the monastery where they were holding this retreat near San Jose. And
hold on, I just want to say, Dramatic Soul says, such a strong, determined, and passionate woman.
Well, it is that. Yeah, I am very determined and very passionate. But I'm driving to this retreat, weekend retreat. And so I'm turned up because I'm rushing and I'm late. I walk in like 10 minutes. They'd already started their entrance meditation, which you always start with. And I sat there for 2 seconds, and I got up and I went up to him, and he was sitting, at that time he was quite large. He looked like a Jewish Buddha. And so I sat on the floor, at his feet, and I said, I need to know what my life is, where, what I'm supposed to be doing, who I am and what I'm supposed to be doing. He says, Yolanda, your life will take you where it will take you, kicking or screaming, it will take you there. Okay.
I love that. It's so true, but it's so true. I think we talked about this last week, but your younger years, you're going to school, you go to college or whatever, you prepare for a career. You think, I got to get this career, and it's like you check these things out: career, the spouse, the children, the house, and you do all these things that you think that this is what you're supposed to do. And then it's like that song, is that all there is? And I think it's at that point that we go, there's got to be more to life than just working, having a family, a children. I think our soul is always pulling us into what it is we were meant to do and be, if we're open to it.
Yeah, and we have to be open to it, and we have to look for the clues. But I think we could speed this up. We could avoid a lot of stuff. We could avoid a lot of stuff if we would get in touch with this spiritual component, that we are spiritual beings having this experience. And so how do we do this experience as well as we can, and to see the bumps and the bruises and the passages of time? Gail Sheehy wrote that book, Passages, very significant book. And learn and try to see beyond what was going on. For me, that discovery that my life is a spiritual journey was critical. And yet, I went through different, time periods and explored different religions. I've always basically been Christian Science, Science of Mind. I mean, it's just how I was raised, and desire is prayer, and God is within. And, your mother would say, you don't have to take this on yourself, Yolanda. Let God help you carry the burden. I learned all these things as a child, and you think, yeah, Ma, what do you know, right? They know a lot.
I wasn't taught that. I mean, that's really powerful. I was brought up where you better take care of yourself, because if you don't, nobody, you know what I'm saying? Even though I was raised in a religion, I didn't get that message. So that was a great message. Now, was your mom Christian Science?
Yes. My mother and her 2 sisters became Christian Science. They're, of course, Catholics. They're Mexican. And grandma was Catholic. And the 3 sisters in the early 30s, during the 30s, not so early, because my cousin was born in the early 30s. And so she was already several years. No, she was a year old. Yeah, it was the early 30s. It was 1932.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And they discovered Christian Science. Can I tell you this story? Do we have time before we get into the next segue?
Go ahead.
It's a powerful story. And I only found out about it maybe 5 years ago from my cousin. She's now passed. She's older. A lot of my cousins are older than me, because my mother was 35 when I was born. So I'm kind of out of sync with, my cousins. But they were living on the south side of Los Angeles. And my cousin told me that she was told by her uncle, who was about her same, a little bit older than her, that was living with him, that she was declared dead. She was ill. She had some kind of, I don't know what. And her mother, Agnes, my aunt, had gone outside to the front of the house because they were going to come, the doctor had left. And she's wailing, she's crying. And the next door neighbor came over and said, what's going on? How can I help you? And she said, my baby's dead, and the baby was a year old. Leo was a year at that time, my cousin. And she said, do you believe in God? And my aunt said, yes. And she said, may I see the baby? And she said, yes. She went in the house. She apparently bathed the baby in warm water, wrapped it in a towel, and brought it back to my aunt alive.
Oh, wow. Woo.
Healing. And so it gives me chills. It gives
I
me,
did. I just got God bumps all over.
yeah. And so I never knew this. And she's, do you know why your mother and our the sisters became Christians? I said no. And she told me that story. So I never knew this. Okay. So that's my mother had great faith, and she studied. She had an 8th grade education, but she went back to school when I was going to junior high and high school, and she got her diploma when I got about the time I did. And then she became a citizen too. So she was always studying. She was always reading. She didn't read popular novels. She didn't listen to soap operas. She read autobiographies of great people. And so she was learning and absorbing from the character qualities in those, great people tend to have better characters, but they're exceptions. But she was learning from these stories. And she told me about some of these stories that she was reading. So she was always uplifting herself. She watched Masterpiece Theater at night.
Oh, wow. Uh-huh.
Until she got older. And then she started watching the Spanish novellas. And I'll tell you, her brain kind of just went too. She was never demented, but she wasn't on target because there's so much negativity in the soap operas.
Yeah.
Really low life stuff. Come on.
They didn't have news 24/7 then either.
Oh God. But anyway, she was just very, very conscious, very virtuous, very spiritual, very uplifting, tough as nails. I mean,
Well, now we know where you get it from, Yolanda. So, Yolanda, even before you lost your sight, you were already very spiritual, very on that path then, right?
on a path, but I didn't have a practice, a discipline. And that's one of the first things I realized after I lost my sight. I was in the bedroom, and we had hardwood floors in the house, and brick and tile. I was a hacienda style, Pueblo style hacienda in New Mexico, and I slipped. I was wearing booties or something, and I slipped backwards, and my head hit the mesquite headboard, and I went, ouch. And I kind of looked up towards the ceiling. Okay, what was that about? Because I talked to God, what was that about? I didn't need that. It hurt. And I started, when I hit my head, the words, like stubborn, blockhead, all those kind of words. And then I said, okay, what's this about? You need to do a spiritual practice. I got it loud and clear.
Wow.
And so that's my lesson to other people, is that we need to do something to inspire, to take in spirit, and poetry, music, uplifting books. Any of our, Ernest Holmes, any of our New Thought people, but there's so many writers that can uplift us. I just read Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, and boy, what an uplifting book. She reads it with this beautiful, resonant voice. And we need to be uplifted. And so we have to counter all this BS that's coming out. And we have to look for truth. Truth is important.
Yes.
And truth with a capital T is God. So and honesty is a virtue. And that's one of the virtues. And, in my book, It's All in the Frijoles. So it's this being in touch with who we are is really important. So I have grown through the blindness. The blindness has become my avatar for choice and creative life. I feel no, people go, oh, I'm so sorry. I said, don't be sorry. I'm blessed. And so its eyes are in the glossary of Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures. Eyes, discernment, eyes, spiritual discernment, mental, not material. Having eyes, and speaking of Jesus, having eyes, see ye not. How many people don't see? That poem that was read the other day at the inaugural, that young woman, Amanda Gorman. She's 22 years old, and she ends the poem with, and I quoted it last week, but let us have the courage to see the light. Let us have the courage to be the light. Let us be brave enough. She used the word brave. Let us be brave enough to be the light. And that's where we have to get. It's not just holding, okay, I want a house, a car, and this and that, and the other thing. I mean, that's all well and good, but Bill Hornaday used to say, with all you're getting, get understanding. And so we have to see, what do we want to be as people? We want to be virtuous. We want to be honest. We want to have integrity. We want to be disciplined. We want to be hardworking. We want to be prudent. We want to be loving. You know, we want to have charity, love for other people. And so it's these qualities that are really relevant instead of all this me, self, poor me, this. I get impatient with it. I'm sorry. I work not to do that, but it is taking that shift of lanes that we talked about and moving from one lane to the other, the spiritual lane to the physical, to the practical physical lane that we have to do, and we have to take care of it all.
We do, and I was thinking about this the other day. When we have our candlelight service, Christmas Eve time at the center, and we turn off all the lights, and we just everybody lights a candle, and how it just illuminates the whole sanctuary. And so I think of us, when we do our spiritual practice and we work on those virtues that you were talking about, we do light the world. That light, that energy in the darkness, all you need is one candle, and you can be that one candle in the darkness by holding that consciousness and being that. But like you said, it takes spiritual practice. So if you have any intention in 2021, I would say really work on your daily intentions. And how am I going to be a light today? And the reason I'd asked you earlier about if you had gone back to look at your journal, because I was thinking about how the day-to-day minutia of life, especially when you're working, when you get irritated about this or that and get upset. And then to look at all that and to think that really, why did I allow myself to get upset over that? Because now it means nothing. But in that moment, we give our power, we give our energy, we diminish our light really in those moments, right?
Yes, but you also, I mean, in my book, Through the Dark, that's coming out in March, I think, mid-end of March, I go through all of this shifting from one place to another. I was very spiritual in the hospital. I held my health. I did all my prayer. I did my self-nurturing. I did my affirmations, and there were prayer chains. Okay, so I had a lot of spiritual support, and the shifts that I went through when I went to boot camp to learn independence training for the blind. It was, oh my God. Anyway, that's an interesting chapter. It was boot camp. And that's the kind of the breaking point, because I really broke open. But I take everybody through these shifts that I went through. And I also reflected, even in writing the book and in the latter part of the years when I was looking back, we also have to be more aware of where we are at the time. And when we have those pangs of, I don't belong here. Like, I knew I should have gotten out of my third marriage fast. I didn't. And I assumed that this man who was very, presented himself as very spiritual and godlike and all the rest of it, really wasn't. Or he had other things going on. Maybe he was when he was, anyway. I won't go there.
That's another book, Yolanda.
I had a book. It's in the book. Well, it is in the book. But I become self-reflective as I look at that. Okay, what was my contribution to my becoming ill? What is an autoimmune illness? An autoimmune illness is when your body turns against itself. Why was my body turning against itself? I'm healthy as a horse. I was a poster child for health. I still am, and I am perfectly healthy. And I have nothing wrong in my body. And I get tested, all the time. But it's interesting because I looked at that and I owned it, and I share that. And I don't think we share it. I think a lot of dis-ease, dis-ease, is that dis-ease. What is triggering the disease? Well, we're in a situation where we're compromised. We want to get out of it, but it's not convenient. And it's just very interesting. You reflect a lot. What's my responsibility? It's not other people doing stuff to you. What are we doing or not doing ourselves to correct what needs to be corrected? And a lot of it is correcting ourselves. It's reshaping ourselves. Okay, I've got this situation going on. How am I going to live with it? Am I going to fight against it? Am I going to resist it? Because resistance doesn't help you.
What you resist persists.
Yes. Yeah.
In one way or another. Just a second ago, Yolanda, you didn't see it, but Krista put up your book cover. It's so beautiful. Krista, can you put that up again, Through the Dark? And you said, who did you said did your cover?
My son's wife, Rebo Khan. Yes. And I didn't know this because I said to Joaquin, I said, I didn't like the way the publisher's designer interpreted what I wanted. I had a very clear image. I had an experience in a twilight state. Again, this is part of my dream work and all this work that I've done through the ProGolf process, intensive journal process. I was inside a dark house, probably in my house. The hacienda is dark at night, or before you open the doors. And the door was ajar, big, thick door, Spanish style door, ajar. And streaming in is this light. And as I looked out onto the portal, there were columns that held up this long 60-foot portal. And there was a green vine growing up on this column, vivid green, vivid, the flowers starting to flower and the sunlight coming through. And I wanted to capture that image on the book cover.
Oh, she did. She really did. It's beautiful.
And it's abstract, and I of course never seen it, but I'm told that it's very beautiful, and the colors are there that were representational of what I was looking out into the light. We have to look into the light. We have to see the good. We have to see the love. We have to know that we are love. We are God's creation, and the sooner we can discover that, the better off we're going to be. But I had that image, and that's my Through the Dark. I'm in the shadows inside, and then I'm seeing this wonderful light. And when I had that image, and that was years ago, I remembered that. That's what I wanted to convey, because we can get through whatever we have to get through. And again, it's the intentions. Both of us went, you and I, different years, went to John of God, and what was there was this intention setting process. I didn't expect that I was going to get 3 intentions. And I go, wow, 3 intentions. That's like magical, Aladdin's lamp. I always wanted to have all those 3 wishes. And you know what? It's true. And in the Bible, I was reading, my daughter's sending me the scriptures that she's reading every day. She cuts and pastes them into a Word document so I can read them with my screen reader. And these biblical messages, and I think I sent you one, are just so extraordinary, and they're so timely, that we have to ask. God wants us to have everything, but we have to be good. We can't just gimme, 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 gimme. It has to be what are we doing to be more God-like?
Yes, and to be more God-like means to be giving, doesn't it?
Yes.
It's where can you give? Where can you be of sacred service, or financially, or whatever? And it's not just about here I am, give, because we are God essence. We are that. And so what we ask for and we give it out, then the universe says, yes, this person is giving. So it gives you more.
Yes. It is the reason I have had all my opportunities. And my first opportunity to go into broadcast journalism, I didn't seek that. It sought me.
Wow, really?
Yeah. And my literary agent, I didn't seek a literary agent. She called me and invited me to lunch. I want to represent you.
Wow.
So and the reason why the first, the broadcast happened was because I was working to empower young Mexican-American, Chicana was a word we used back then, Latina today, women, because I worked with a caseload of teenagers during the War on Poverty and the Neighborhood Youth Corps program. And I was giving them everything I had as a 20-something-year-old. What did I know? I was a few years older than them. In fact, I'm still friends with one, and she's a grandmother, and she's in her 60s. And I say, I still see you as 15,
right.
because but I'm just a few, I'm a decade older than her or whatever. And so it's really interesting. I just gave so much, and I was at a political party, and the executive producer of this television show, the first TV show I did, was going to be appointed to a deputy mayor of Los Angeles. He couldn't be in media and politics at the same time. So he wanted to replace himself with a male-female team. He wanted a woman on air. He was visionary.
Wow.
I was the Mexican-American woman to appear on a network affiliate in Los Angeles, the second largest market in the country. So the opportunity came because I was giving myself to the community. And the opportunity for the literary agent, I was writing a column for a chain of bilingual newspapers in Los Angeles. It was the largest bilingual chain at the time. And I was doing that, just contributing an article every week. And that one of those articles, it's a long story, but led to my getting a literary agent. I didn't seek her; she sought me because I was giving. I cared about community, and I still do.
Right.
I'm very on the ground in terms of community issues, and I genuinely feel them. I genuinely believe them. The AUW, one of the groups I belong to, has a new initiative now to focus on Latinas. And when I heard the Zoom on that, I immediately called the woman that's in charge. I said, I'm here as a resource to you. Use me.
So Yolanda, that's a good point. So for people, here we are in COVID, they've lifted some of the restrictions a little bit, but you can still be active, right? I mean, people can still be involved with things they're passionate for. You just need to step up and see what is yours to do.
Zoom. And what is yours to do is very important, because one of my intentions when I went to John of God, obviously I wanted to restore the site, which is interesting because in a way, some people say, you can see, Yolanda, you see everything. And again, it's sight. It's not physical. It's spiritual discernment. Yes. It's mental. It's not material. And so, what do we see? And I see possibility. I see good. I see love. I see when I'm coaching young high school and college students who help me, grocery shop when I get to the markets. It's wonderful. I love going because I can coach them. I encourage them. When I pick up a nugget in a young person, any kind of nugget, I want to draw it out, and I talk to them. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Or if they're kind of lazy, I say, you need to learn the difference between a cucumber and a zucchini. Everything you do in this job is going to help you someday.
That's right. That's right.
And you don't know that because, I'm here, I'm washing dishes. No. If you're digging a trench, you ask a Mexican worker, ask the other workers, I'm digging a trench, Well, you ask the Mexican, I'm building a beautiful cathedral. I'm building a beautiful home. And so it's that vision. Work is a virtue. It's not, I've got to work. That's why you see these workers rising up so quickly. And, this fastest growing group of upward mobility. It's amazing. And we're now a $2.7 trillion market in the US, greater than Australia, and we're going to surpass France pretty soon. That's just our market segment of the country. So we contribute because of these virtues that we bring, as we're raised. If we're raised with those virtues, they're being lost now.
They are being. It's all about the money, and which I understand that's important. But I remember, I don't know if you were at the center when Dr. Bill Tolliver was there or not. Anyway, he was in between Dr. Joe at one point and Dr. Tom. And he was a great teacher. I loved him. But he made the comment that he had went to McDonald's one day and he was getting something, and the girl that was waiting on him, he said, "Do you like working here?" And she goes, "Yeah, I like it." And he goes, "Then you need to tell your face." You need to tell your face. And that's the truth, because no matter what job you're doing, if you do it with passion and do the best you can, somebody is going to want to snatch you up because they see that dedication and they see that passion and how dedicated you are. And so that's what that reminded me of, what you were talking about, that, yes, okay, you may be digging ditches, be the best but have a vision of something bigger that you're working towards, and do it with passion. Do it with passion.
Passion's important, and the and what we give passion to what we love. So love what you're doing, and give it your all. And it creates opportunities. I'm telling you, all my opportunities have come from my service. And
Yes.
and as I really in this last year, I mean, I've learned how to Zoom, and I have meetings, and it's really it's wonderful, because in that instance with that woman who was leading this new initiative, I looked her up, and I contacted her, and we had an hour, almost about 45-minute conversation. And I have to cycle back around because she hasn't come back to me. But I said, when we have a new administration, there's going to be some changes, and that's going to be the time to really move forward with any ideas to help people, to uplift people. And I love focusing on women, on children. I started a child development center for working poor families when I was in my 20s. I wrote
Wow.
the proposal.
I mean, that's
I didn't want
amazing,
kids.
Yolanda.
I
Yeah.
didn't want kids then.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that is beautiful. And so you have such a background. I would think these different organizations would be like knocking your door down just because you have such passion and great ideas and dedication. I think that's wonderful. And it's obvious that your spiritual journey is still unfolding.
Oh yeah, oh
Yeah.
yeah, oh yeah. It's what is the highest purpose? Let's go from higher. I'm at higher purpose.
Right.
What's the highest purpose? And so I always ask God. I mean, when I do my exercises and my yoga, I do a V thing. I can't move in this jacket, but
Right.
I do a V, and I kind of just bring in the light,
Uh-huh.
and I radiate. I seek to radiate light and be a light unto the world. And so I feel like everything, Reverend Laura, is I've been coming to the center since April Fool's Day, I think, but like the 4th or something like that, the beginning of April. Whatever Sunday in April after the 1st was the Sunday I was there, and it could have been the 1st. Since 2012, when I moved here, I
Wow.
came the same weekend I moved I was living in La Quinta at the time with an old friend, and I mean, I just keep reading, working, growing. I read comparative religion. I read in Buddhism. I was listening to Vedanta this morning. It's just it's also nourishing, and we need to take in spirit. So I keep seeking to grow. I'm hardly perfect. I love who I am. I love my life, and I'm open to be and do whatever is mine to do. And there's more and more all the time.
There's always more. There's always more. That's the great thing about the universe. As it expands, there's just so many more opportunities to step into the magnificence,
And the best thing is that for people who are feeling me, and poor me, and sad, and all the rest of it, do something to volunteer. Make a phone call to a neighbor. Bake bread or take food to somebody. Do something. It's
And you know what, Yolanda, don't you find you probably get more joy out of it, maybe even than the other person. The gift is how you feel afterwards too. And you're making a difference in somebody's life. You're like an angel to that person.
Well, I see people as angels, and I have so many angels in my life. I can't walk across the highway without running into an angel, and it's really interesting. And so I serve. I seek to be a positive force in my experiences as I'm out in the world, and I have drawn angelic things from different people that I've met, and it's all two-way. I met a young woman. I was walking, and she asked me if I needed help, and I said, well, we can walk together. And so we're talking and walking, and it turns out that her mother had just died a few months before.
No.
And so I invited her. I was going to go get coffee before I went to the market, and I invited her. I said, would you like to have a cup of coffee with me? And she accepted. So we went, and I had a little bite to eat, and she had her coffee, and I treated her, and we sat there and we talked for quite a while. And then I gave her my information. I said, you can reach out to me if you need anything, just, friendly word or whatever. I never heard from her again. I wonder if she wasn't homeless. And, but it was, I really felt I wanted to give her something because she had just lost her mother. That's hard to lose your mother. I
Absolutely.
remember losing my mother. I had to drop out for 6 months. My mother was so extraordinary in my life, and I wasn't working either. And
Right.
so that was a challenging time to move through, but yet it was. And I ended up in New Mexico. Somebody connected me, a friend of a friend connected me with a place where I stayed for like $300 for a month on a beautiful ranch in northern New Mexico. Uh, it, that's a whole extraordinary experience.
But
But
but don't you find life how interesting? And you may never hear from that young lady again, or however old she was, but that was a connection that day for you and for her. And it's those little nuggets that you don't know what a difference you might have made in that person's day, and she made one in yours. You felt good. Gosh, Yolanda, we're almost out of time. I just want to tell everybody to please. Uh, when is your book coming out, Yolanda?
it's coming out later in March, and the links will go up pretty soon. I just talked to the publisher, and she says, she's still doing the mega data, but it'll be coming out in March, and I'll let you have some links there, I think.
Right, there's some links here too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to be available on the internet, Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and I think Books a Million. Is that what the third one is? It's up on the screen, and then there'll be direct links that I can get those too. But it's going to be available where books are sold, basically online. I'm used to going out in person and signing books, and I may work out something like that. Not to have a book signing, but to be able to sign books for people, because I know a lot of people like to have that. And so it is coming out, and I'm excited. It's been a long pregnancy, I call it. Elizabeth Gilbert says, "Don't view a book as a baby," but you know what? I've been birthing this thing for 10 years, and
right.
I've been.
Well, it's about time it comes out kicking and screaming, right?
Yeah.
That love in the world, right?
Yeah,
So
this one isn't kicking and screaming, though. It's been a long process, but it is. It's been a really beautiful process.
And warm and cuddly.
Yeah. But I'm happy with it. It is a good story. It is a good story. I know it's going to help a lot of people. And it's not about blindness. It's about how do we get through a cataclysmic, life-changing, traumatic life event and thrive, not survive, but thrive, because we're here to thrive.
Absolutely.
And Spirit helps us do that. God helps us do that. And the more that we seek to manifest the godly qualities, because it's not just, it is about self-development, self-mastery. And I want to give a plug to the self-mastery course that's coming up, because Reverend Charles, he's not calling it self-mastery. What's he calling it, class?
Is it Beyond Limits? Is that the one?
Yeah, Beyond Limits is a self-mastery course, but the self-mastery is something that we need to engage in all of our lives. We're never finished. Continue to develop and grow. And I think that's what happens to a lot of people. They start stagnating, and then they're bored with themselves and everybody else, and they get, gripey and cranky. And so we don't want to be gripey and cranky. We want to be thriving. We want to be giving. We want to be loving. We want to be empowering others, as well as ourselves.
Absolutely.
We have that opportunity.
When I leave this plane, I want to go out kicking and screaming, but in a great way, like joyous and living every moment like that. So I just want to remind our viewers that please support Center for Spiritual Living Palm Desert. Before I do that, there's Interesting Settlers says, Yolanda is such an inspiring lady who lives abundant and exciting life. Dr. Laura, thanks for today's interview. Thank you. But anyway, back to make sure you support Center for Spiritual Living. There's a link there. There's a link on our website. And next week, I'm going to be a little different. I'm going to teach my Ho'oponopono class, which is about responsibility, self-responsibility. And it's really, I've taught it before at the center. I'm going to jam it in an hour. But it's an ancient Hawaiian process, and it's very powerful. And so please join me next week, and I'll have some slides, and there'll be some handouts that you can get on our website afterwards. So thank you, Yolanda.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
To have had you here on the show. You are, I mean, we could talk for days with the stories.
Yeah, well, we're two gals. Yeah.
So, Yolanda, you have a very great time, and I'm looking forward to your book coming out. And thank everybody. I want to thank you for joining us today, and go set some intentions. Start writing that journal or that book, even if it's just about your life story. It will have an impact on nobody else but your family and yourself when you review your life and what you've done. So thank you all. Thank you, Yolanda.